Hello, everybody, and welcome to Episode 2 of the Republic of Play podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Darren, and I'm joined by my good friend, Toby.
Hello.
Now, this podcast was scheduled to be every 2 weeks, and we are slightly late to that at about 6 weeks over.
And counting, I think, yeah.
And that's because at the end of the last episode, I think I told you when I arrived here, I was like kind of feeling sick when I first arrived. Do you remember?
I remember.
I said I had like an itchy, scratchy throat. It was kind of coming on, but did the podcast, got the job done. Made it home just about, even though I almost went halfway down the country the wrong direction.
Yep.
Because trains are easy for me. But yeah, because of that, I actually fell deathly ill for like 2 weeks. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember?
Oh, I remember. So you told me
I was
about
like
it
completely out of action. And then we couldn't do the next episode because I was just not feeling well enough to even 2 weeks later to go back and do it. Then the following week, a storm hits or whatever. And then this week, a storm has hit as well.
So Storm Kira last week, Storm Dennis this week.
Yeah, so it's just been really unfortunate timing, basically. But anyway, we're back now, and hopefully, if we can just try our best to do it every 2 weeks, that would be the best. I'm actually trying to get a driver's license now, just because I don't want to be relying on public transport. So I downloaded on Steam because I'm a gamer, a driving theory test thing.
What?
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
It's like £8 on Steam or something, and I've been doing a few tests. I've failed 4 times in a row.
I need one of those too, because although I'm 28 years old, I cannot drive a car.
Yeah, same. Well, I know how to actually drive a car, but I don't know roads. I don't know what that means. I don't know road signs is what I meant.
Gotcha.
The rules of the road.
Yeah.
Because, I grew up and lived in Ireland, and the road signs are actually different over here. And I think I've been in a car over here like 5 times ever. So when I went onto this mock UK driving test and I was like looking at things, I've never heard of half of this, or I've seen half of these signs. And I was walking down the street with Rosie. I was just like, oh, what is, like, we were playing a game. Like, what are these signs? We just didn't know. Never looked at them before because I never had to.
Well, I guess you're lucky there, because that's the easier bit, the bit to learn is that,
that's what they
part
say.
Of the test. If you know how to drive a car, which you do, then that's the hard bit.
Yeah. Well, I haven't done it in a while, so I'm sure I'll have to figure things out. I think perspective is probably going to be the most difficult thing, like knowing your surroundings and reversing and parking. So anyway, hopefully if we do get there, that means I could just drive to you and we can make this a lot easier. So anyway, we're back anyway for every 2 weeks, and we're just going to get straight into it. So we have our news segment. We've wrapped up some news stories just from the last couple of weeks. We didn't want to go too far back, although we will mention a couple of big things that happened a little bit later on in the show. But the first thing that we want to just get straight on into is Warcraft 3 being refunded.
Yep, been a bit of a car crash for Blizzard here, to be honest, and something they've been pushing for the last... I think someone will correct me, but Reforged was announced, I think 2 years ago, maybe it was announced. Mm-hmm. And at that point, they were already showing the artwork off. It looked like it was almost, about to be done. It had been delayed repeatedly at that point.
So explain to me just from the top, because I actually know very little about Warcraft 3 and Warcraft 3 Reforged, but what exactly was the remaster supposed to entail? Because some games do full remakes, like Resident Evil 2. Some just touch up graphics. Some just add HD resolution. So what was this?
Well, there you go. That goes into question quite well. So this is, Warcraft 3, one of the granddaddies of the strategy genre, shall we say. It must be 12 years old, if not 15 years old or something. I think maybe even more of that at this point, excuse me for not knowing. But an old real-time strategy game. Built a lot of the fundamentals of other strategy games that, that not just Blizzard, but other companies built on. It's Warcraft 3, a mod for Warcraft 3 launched the, Dota and the League of Legends. Dota was originally a custom map for Warcraft 3. There's now a whole genre of games, just to show how influential it was. But, about 2 years ago, Blizzard announced they wanted to give it some love, give it some TLC. Because, it's still a game. There is still a pro scene for Warcraft 3. It's still a game there's a big competitive scene for. You can still find, hundreds of ladders and things like that for it online. And Blizzard decided to give it some love and completely overhaul the game. So it was primarily a graphical overhaul and graphical update. But on top of that, there were supposed to be additional features. There were supposed to be some new single-player assets, some new things here, some new cutscene changes, a bit of changes there. There's also supposed to be obviously complete a whole new UI. Extensive reworking of their competitive scene, their ranking, their ladder system, all of this sort of stuff, which was what people were most excited about. Because people who play the game these days play it for the multiplayer, they play it for the custom maps, etc. So, Blizzard showed it off first about 2 years ago. They showed new assets, new artwork, everything looked fantastic. And to be honest, at that point, it looked like it had probably been almost done. Because, it is an old game. It's not that big. Surely you think the artwork can't take that long, no matter what happens to for 50 models or so. Released 2-3 weeks ago now. Absolutely bombed in the community. Absolutely bombed.
So what went wrong?
So firstly, what went wrong is the things that Blizzard said were going to be in it were not in it. They cut features basically without telling anybody. All of the new content for single player, which was already getting more and more limited as we were close to release date, didn't exist anymore. They cut a whole bunch of it.
So they were planning on adding additional.
Yes, but only minimal. To be fair,
Right.
It was only supposed to be small. There was supposed to be some new cutscenes and things of that nature, which just weren't there. The things that were there were a significant downgrade from what had been showed off before. If you look at the cutscenes that they showed off a long time ago as assets, and then what was released in the game, it was night and day, not the same. It was not the same product. But to be honest, although that's what affected me, because I care about the single player, I have memories of it, fondly as a young man, playing it single player. So I like that side of things. The key for the community and why it was so, downvoted and hated is because they crushed the entire multiplayer and ripped the heart out of it. So they got rid of all the ladder systems that were in the game so far, all the matchmaking, all the ranking systems, all of these things which were already super basic because they were built on 15-year-old technology. And Blizzard completely got rid of all of them. They made it so it's essentially impossible now to host a tournament, do any sort of ranking system, or anything like that, which is what was keeping that game alive. And it makes just absolutely no sense for anyone involved, really. So that was where the primary hate of this game has come along. And on top of that, I know we mentioned as well, they changed the end user license agreement, so they now own all modded content for the game. They own all custom maps. They have the rights to, etc., which is something that people have been making custom maps for this game for 15 years. It's just a whole wave here of different bad decisions they've made. And obviously everyone's calling it now Warcraft 3 Refunded. It's been completely, obviously we don't get those stats, but I can tell you just by reading online, the sheer volume of refunds that Blizzard must have got is crazy. I know people complained or people complained to like fair standards and stuff like that, and that's why Blizzard had to actually release a dedicated link just to refund Warcraft 3. Right. There's a link that you just share, and it will instantly take you to the Warcraft 3 refunded menu, etc. I mean, I refunded it myself because so I do completely understand because it was, and I think it was released for £30 or whatever it was. It was not a cheap game for a 15-year-old remaster, and there was no value for money there. And to be honest, I think we've just seen the end of Blizzard as, to be honest, one of the shining lights of the gaming industry, which they were for so many years. They were, a byword for quality and finished products, and now they have completely lost that.
And have they put out like a statement as to why this has happened? Like, did they say, especially if it's missing stuff that they did show or then started to lose features, did they kind of communicate that beforehand?
No, well, yes, the things that were missing, they did communicate very, very very close to the release date. But it was, I said, the main hate has come from the multiplayer side, and nothing about that was discussed whatsoever. And
did they give a reason more?
They didn't, and there was, I can't remember the wording of it now, but they released a very, very budget, borderline offensive, that had so little in it, like statement from them just saying, we're sorry the release hasn't gone according to plan. We will continue to try and support the game through updates and new features. Nothing at all.
That sucks, man, because like the RTS genre especially is like, there's so many good games from like 10 or 15 years ago that are like absolutely beloved, and 20 years ago, in the early 2000s especially. I guess that is 20 years ago now, pretty much. So it's just such a shame that like a remaster like that would fail so hard. Even the Age of Empires 2 kind of remake that they just did recently, I can't remember what it's actually called. It's not
Definitive Edition.
Yeah, that's it. Like, yeah, that was straight. Like, its multiplayer features just weren't. Yeah. It's just really basic. It's like you could make this. It seems like such little effort to really make this just go that little bit further than to be like a game that sticks around for like so much longer. That it just seems really short-sighted to mess something up like that. Like if it's not right, just delay it. Yeah. If they don't have those kind of features like ladders and things that people have come to expect from the previous game, then like just like what's the hurry?
Absolutely.
It can't be that expensive for a touch-up remaster old game because the body of work is done, and it's such an important touchstone to the RTS community as well. That are starving for a game like that at the moment. Like they might not be the biggest genre ever, obviously, And Dota and games like that have eaten away at a lot of the real-time strategy fans out there. I know they're not the same game, but that rise kind of coincides with the decline of RTS games. But since like Company of Heroes 2 and Age of Empires, there hasn't really been that much in well-respected RTS games. So something coming back like a Warcraft 3, if it had a ladder system and some staying power and extra things like community support and tools and things like that, it's so strange that they just mess it up. It seems just so ripe for even, not to be corporate, but monetization opportunities later on, stuff.
But I mean, you mentioned obviously Age of Empires, and although that is still quite well respected as a definitive edition, it didn't have everything in it you needed, but that was a small studio that's responsible for that. And you can understand if there's some things were missing and weren't quite perfect. This is Blizzard, aka Activision's like most profitable arm, company of thousands of employees who know how important this is to the community and has been for such a long time. There's just no excuse. There's no lack of money there. There's no lack of staff there. So it only really can be a lack of care, and that's what people are taking from it. And it's no excuse really.
And just to clarify as well, with Age of Empires, it was actually a really faithful. The definitive edition is totally faithful. Bundles all the content together, and it looks great. It was just that the extra. If they went the extra mile just with the multiplayer, especially like there's a very, very, very loose and hard to kind of get into ranking system that they've got. But if they made like a really good approachable ranking system and stuff, then I think it would just be a lot easier for a lot of people to connect with and stay in the game and stuff like that. But completely. But they're not really comparable. Like it's still a good definitive edition. It is the best version of the game, and no one was really complaining about that. But it sucks. I don't know. Yeah, it seems really.
There we are. As I said, I think they've burnt their bridges really with the community. That's about 4 or 5 things down. Massive issues people have had with the with Blizzard, / Activision at the moment, and there's a lot of hate for them online. But
this is a bit of a tangent. I know you used to play World of Warcraft. They have their vanilla edition, don't they? Where you can play that? Classic. Do you play that?
I played it for a week or so when it came out. As I think a lot of people do, because they keep releasing their numbers, and their numbers have been very, very low for Classic.
Oh, right.
Because I think they didn't do anything wrong there. They did exactly what they said they were going to do, and they did it very well. Sorry, excuse me. But yeah, it's one of those things where I think most people, including Blizzard themselves, know that the classic version of the game is the hardest, it's the most unforgiving, it's the most un-user-friendly and un-person-friendly game possible, because it's based on 15 years ago technology. So most people, like myself, jumped into it for a week, 2 weeks, a month for the nostalgia, and then went, actually, I really like all the features they've added over the last 15 years. There's been a lot of changes they've made, a lot of good quality of life improvements that I don't have anymore. So it seems that there is still a good fan base who are playing that game and loving that game, but it's nowhere, it's not comparable or competition to World of Warcraft, its main, main servers.
All right, so let's move on to the next one. So this is more about a more general topic about the state of E3, especially for 2020. So Sony weren't at E3 last year, which people kind of put off as like, well, they don't have that many games coming out. It's the end of the life cycle of the PlayStation, and I'm sure they'll be back for the PlayStation 5 hype next year in 2020. But they put out a statement not that long ago saying that they're not going to be showing up. And then just recently, Geoff Keighley, who's been known to kind of host the E3 or just be a producer of E3 and kind of a face of the industry that would be associated with E3 for 20 plus years really, and then now he's more known, I'd say, for the video game awards every year. He just put out a statement in a tweet that he said that he would not be attending the show this year. He said, quote, "I've debated what to say about E3 2020. While I want to support the developers who will showcase their work, I also need to be open and honest with you, the fans, about precisely what to expect from me. I have made the difficult decision to decline to produce E3 Coliseum. For the first time in 25 years, I won't be participating in E3. I look forward to supporting the industry in other ways at other events in the future," end quote. Now, I thought it was a really strange quote. He doesn't really go into why or anything like that. He says he wants to be honest with fans. Now, there's last year E3 leaked a bunch of influencer and journalist kind of credentials and information, personal information, including addresses and numbers and things like that. So they kind of like lost a little bit of trust there, I think, with the journalists and things like that. But this year they've also had another kind of website leak. I actually don't know the full details of it, but it's nothing as severe as that. But I think, again, it was like, oh, really? Like, again, like they're having some information leak that people are a little bit worried about. And it just doesn't seem to be like, the not running properly, I guess you could say.
For an event of that magnitude,
exactly,
etc.
Considering last year, it just seems like I can't think of the word, but they don't have everything all buttoned down and buttoned up, right?
Yeah.
They seem to have some holes still in them, or whatever. I can't think of a good analogy on
No,
that.
no,
But you know what I mean.
Yep.
So because of that, they seemed. I don't know if that ties into why Geoff Keighley decided not to go there, but he just decided not to participate this year. But it does seem to be like quite a big blow to have like a major player, you know, one of the big three publishers and console manufacturers really not take part, and then you have like someone who's super big in the industry also consider it not relevant or important enough for him to go to report on what's going to be shown there.
I mean, I guess Sony's more understandable this year because we're all expecting an announcement for PS5 prior to E3 this year. So I guess from their side, they're going to see it. All I can imagine is they see it as redundant. All the stuff they would show at E3, they're going to have shown a few months earlier. You know, hopefully by March, April time, you know, we're all predicting. So it's probably just the fact that there's not going to be enough content for them to do two conferences in, you know, within a few months' time of each other. But obviously, you know, E3 is always going to have a soft spot, you know, in my heart. Obviously, Darren and I used to make some videos regarding E3 wrap-ups, and that was our first sort of absolute tiny water droplet of internet.
I totally
YouTube
forgot that.
Celebrity, I know. But so we used to cover all the you know E3 news on a day-by-day basis. So we used to, you know, watch it together on streams and stuff. So it would always have a soft spot in my heart. I still love seeing it. I still will probably watch a lot of the conferences this year just because I love seeing, you know, the glimpses of things that are coming out. But you know, I do think that maybe is it becoming less relevant? Maybe it is. I don't know. What do you think?
It certainly seems like it is. Like, you know, the question of relevancy is interesting because in 2013, Sony revealed their PlayStation in February at their own conference, and then they still went to E3 to show like more details on it. But I guess this year maybe they're just going to have a complete blowout and show everything in one go. And certainly, I feel like at least hardcore gamers or gamers that are I mean, everyone's going to be reporting on it, even journalists and mainstream. So, I mean, if they just make the event all about them, they don't have to pay the ESA an absolutely huge amount of money.
Absolutely.
And they just get to do it on their own terms, and they can decide when to do it. They could do it after E3 if they wanted, even at this point. Although I think they will go before, probably. But there's rumors about like they're kind of waiting to see maybe potentially if Xbox will go first and announce their prices, and maybe they could try to undercut them. There's all these other rumors about the cooling systems and the hardware in the PlayStation apparently is really driving up the costs, and whether or not they can take a hit on that. And you know, Sony's sitting on top at the moment in terms of revenue. They over 100 million PlayStation 4s sold, so they have an extremely impressive console that they just come off the back of. So I feel like they're also kind of thinking like, well, we've got people on our side and they're going to be wanting to pay attention to our next iteration, so they can just do it on themselves. The question is, is E3 relevant or irrelevant, or what's going to be like in future? As a consumer trade show, they're talking about opening it up to actually more people and getting more fans in. I don't know if that's going to be a good idea. That seems to like push publishers away from that idea because they want to have their own kind of almost showcase where it's just influencers and media. So it'll be interesting to see kind of like how that all plays out. Because with regards to whether it's still relevant or not, if I was wearing my corporate hat and I was saying like as a publisher, I'd be like, well, it doesn't seem like as a big publisher, right? Microsoft, Nintendo, Sony. It doesn't seem like you'd need to go when you have like your audience is super engaged anyway. Microsoft probably have the most to gain from it because they want to like pull people away from the other two consoles, if anything. So they probably have the most to gain to going to like other events and as much consumer electronics shows as they can, like CES and things like that.
I mean, let's be honest. As you said, for Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, you know, it might be a different story for some of the game publishers and etc. themselves, but for the manufacturers, realistically, there's not a lot of there isn't really anything they're going to gain from
because the media can just come to them, right? The media really needs them just as much as they need the media. I mean, obviously they wouldn't want to rule out media altogether, but media is not going to not report on a PlayStation 5 reveal or whatever it might be. So I feel like they could have done this a long time ago if they really wanted to, right? Done it on their own terms and just get as much as impact as before.
I mean, to be honest, I think the only reason they've done it for so long is much more about consumer goodwill and engaging with the audience a bit in this big event where where all your media and all your journalists from major magazines to tiny indies and stuff are all in one place, all engaging with you, and it's a good sort of PR opportunity more than anything else. But as you said, I think now we're at the point now where we're in the 5th gen or whatever it is, where companies know the value they have with these consoles. They can happily host their own massive event with all the bells and whistles on it, and completely completely show exactly what they want to show with their own angles, without any of the time limits, without any of the other restrictions, and without the money they'll be paying out to the organisers.
Have you ever watched I haven't heard any reports on this, but the PC gaming show at E3?
I think I probably caught bits of it, but
it's usually known for being pretty mediocre compared to like the other ones. Yeah, well, they just never really have that much to show. PC-centric publishers don't really tend to get too involved to do any reveals or anything like that. It's often like an indie showcase. Nothing wrong, not to say there's anything wrong with indies. They can show off some pretty interesting games. Most of the games I think from last year just like were in early access and then just like closed down or didn't make it. There was like a 1,000-player battle royale game that just like completely failed.
Sure.
So it's just like things like that. It'll just be interesting to see, like, without a major publisher, will other publishers, like games publishers, will they go towards showcasing things at a PC gaming show? Like, there's only so much time you have to show your game off now at an Xbox stage. You know, if you're a multi-platform game or if you're on PC as well as Xbox, for instance. So you've only got so much time there, and then PS4 is gone, and then Nintendo don't really do E3 either anymore, properly anyway. So PC gaming, maybe kind of a result of this might be that we get a better show for the PC gaming side, maybe, or everyone just says no and they don't bother like putting their stuff up there at all.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it seems that the only way that what E3 is obviously not going to stop running, they're just going to make it much more of a consumer event where they just make it much more like any other expo. It's not going to be a journalist and trade event like they try and market it as now. It's just going to be a, pay 200 quid and come along and have a look at our cosplayers and
the things I'm interested in would be like for PC especially, like there's rumors about Payday 3 maybe is coming around.
Payday 3
so it's like that would be kind of a game that would, if you wanted to make a big showcase out of PC stuff, right? They were kind of a PC centric game at first, and then they migrated to consoles and are very successful there. But that would be the kind of thing that I think could have a place to have their own announcement at a PC gaming conference, and then it could be on console as well, of course. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they do anything like that.
Oh no, it definitely could still be great. I don't want to completely shit all over it. It could still be very well. It would just have to refocus itself slightly, as you said, and maybe up the quality. I think there's nothing wrong with having a huge amount of indie games. Obviously, a lot of whom are not going to make it, etc. But you've got to have the AAA side of that as well, and things that are tried and tested too. Yeah,
because you need the AAA to bring in the eyeballs.
Absolutely.
Right? In the first place. But yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting that that Geoff Keighley has decided to move on from it. It'll be interesting to see like if E3, what kind of shape or form it takes next year. Because you would think, especially with a year building up to consoles, that it would be a really big one, right? Yeah. Really big one. But then it just seems weird that there's not really much hype for it actually, at the moment anyway. All right, so moving on to the next one. So this is more in your wheelhouse, but NVIDIA's GeForce Now has pulled Activision Blizzard games as they weren't supposed to be there. An NVIDIA representative explained that while Activision had permitted its games to be part of the beta test, the two companies had not discussed licensing terms beyond the beta. Consequently, NVIDIA was forced to remove the titles, adding, quote, "Per their request, please be advised Activision Blizzard games will be removed from the service," end quote. So we have actually got a question that was written in about this, but have you experienced NVIDIA GeForce?
I was going to say, I think the way you phrased that question was probably quite complimentary and a bit glossed over a little bit, because it was Blizzard and Activision that pulled their games from NVIDIA, not NVIDIA saying, you guys don't want to be on, you guys shouldn't be on the platform anymore. So it only launched a matter of weeks.
I got this from Eurogamer, by the way.
Classic Eurogamer. It was only a matter of weeks or things that it launched properly and become popular before that. They obviously paid a lot of marketing, because I saw it popping up all over the place on different sites. And then their first big piece of publicity was 20 plus, I think about 20 major AAA games were pulled straight away from the platform.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not the best start from them, but it does. I know we spoke a bit about cloud gaming last time, but it does seem to be, GeForce Now does seem to be the most user-friendly and supported of all the platforms, because it seems to operate quite like Stadia, as in, you can run it on your TV, you can run it on an Android phone or an Android tablet and all other sorts of devices. But unlike Stadia, you play the games you already own. It links up to Steam, it links up to Origin, it links up to a few different services as well. I think it links up to Epic and a few other things as well. And as long all you need is the whatever controller is compatible with what you want to play it on. But other than that, you're playing the games you already own. There's no other major costs on that apart from the monthly fee.
Right. I didn't know that. That sounds pretty good.
That's what I mean. So it has the most potential there, and I think I was reading a lot of reviews and things over the last few weeks when it's become quite popular, and they've all been very, very positive. Most of them have said, there are still a few kinks, and it's not quite 100% there, but of the services available, it's by far got the most promise. And obviously, Nvidia have the name and the budget, etc., to have these big agreements where they can use everyone else's software and things like that. So to be honest, I think all we're really waiting for, I will test it as soon as it releases on iOS. I probably will test it on my iPad or something.
Well, I was going to say, how do you use it on your TV?
So I don't know. I don't know the logistics. It doesn't have its own controllers or anything like that. So I'm assuming there must be some sort of other compatible controllers or what have you. Or
you need something to connect to the TV even in the first place. Because it's done through and like the way you're watching YouTube on your phone, you can Chromecast it, for instance, or something like that.
But I mean, I guess a lot of TVs do have USBs and stuff, and you do have keyboards and mice and stuff that are compatible. That already exists. I mean, they're not the best.
We'll have to look that up.
We'll have to check that out. But I don't know. But I know you can also actually try it completely for free as well. Like their free option is unlimited. Wow. But in terms of time frame, it's not like a 1 month only, but you can only play for an hour at a time. Right. You have slightly downgraded graphics, but I think it's only very, very minimal. Yeah. Like RTX isn't on and a few other bits.
I did see something about that. And then is this only accessible then, I assume, to Nvidia, people who have Nvidia cards?
So I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case because it's not streaming from your computer. It's streaming from, it's a cloud computer service. Yeah, it's from there. So it's irrelevant if you own an NVIDIA card yourself or not. It's just you pay the annual membership fee. You pay the annual fee or the monthly fee or what have you. Yeah. And then you have unlimited. But obviously, you're going to be a PC gamer because you're going to have your Steam games or your Epic games, whatever that you're going to be logging into.
Well, it seems like a much better solution to the problem that Stadia is trying to quote solve.
Absolutely.
Which is you already have your games. You can just play on different platforms. I mean, that's like they can never compete.
No.
What can they do then?
Absolutely not.
They can't have you charge. See, they charge for. You have to buy the games and the server, and then pay for a monthly service
and the hardware,
and then you have to buy your controller and so on. Yeah. So that seems just absolutely crazy.
No,
there's no way they could compete. They'd have to. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they just restructure. They're going to try and stay competitive, which is good. But I think with their current model, there is absolutely.
Why would you ever choose to buy a Google Stadia for Well, I think the hardware is about 80 quid or whatever it is, and then plus the service, plus all the additional AAA games, which are £50 each or whatever. When you can go and buy a second-hand PlayStation 4 for £100 or whatever, with a lot of games from at this point in the product's life cycle, and it's not the newest, but it will play everything the Stadia will play for a significantly less cost to entry, and it does other things as well, and like Blu-ray, Media Center, all that side of things. Yeah. So.
Well, the argument might be like, I want to play it in 4K, but I would argue with like streaming and stuff, it's just never going to reach that quality that you get with your own 4K.
The reviews I've read are that it's nowhere near 4K. Most times it seems to struggle to be 1080p. So, one day the technology will be there, and I know, give this time 10 years, I think a lot more things will be cloud-based, but at the moment, we're just not there yet.
Well, we got a question on this. I should have read it really at the start, but Dan Suso wrote in and said, NVIDIA has released GeForce Now. Thoughts on it and cloud streaming gaming? We already kind of just explained our thoughts on it, but what do you think about cloud streaming and gaming just in general? I mean, we did touch on it last week, but do you see yourself actually subscribing to one of these services?
Absolutely. I mean, I could definitely see the desire, and I think it could be great. And I know we spoke briefly about on live last time, and apparently there's another service called like Shadowplay, or not Shadowplay, something along those lines that I actually subscribed to for a very, very brief time to test out a year or two ago, and it was much early stages where it literally, they've got their huge big servers, and you essentially have your own individual cloud-based computer on their server. So you open it up, and it's like a fresh install of Windows.
Right.
You can do with it from what you will. You can install Steam from it. You can watch videos on it. You can store documents on it. Whatever you like.
It's like your partition.
Exactly. It's your partition of a really, really high-end computer server system. But I definitely think in a few years' time, we're going to be in a position where, on your handheld, whatever, on your tablets, etc., you're going to be able to stream AAA quality games from Nvidia or from Google or whatever cracks this market first. But I think it's always going to be dependent on the internet speed.
Well, for instance, you have a pretty good PC.
Yeah.
You've got a PlayStation. You've got a good TV and stuff. So why would you want to then go into streaming if you've already got that stuff? Or are you thinking like 5 years time, maybe I won't get a new PC. I'll just.
Well, I don't know if we'll ever be that, or maybe we will, but maybe we won't be at that point in 5 years. But I think more about on the move and on the go. To be honest, I think more about, you know, traveling and commuting and stuff like that, you know, places where you would take your iPad to play games now on the train or what have you. I think we'll be in a position, you know, at some point where that will be cloud-based. And I think, you know, with, I don't want to get too technical, but with you know, the 5G mobile network launching in the UK in the next few years, I think that will have the bandwidth to support, you know, that sort of infrastructure. And I think that's probably where it'll become most prevalent, it'll be mobile.
I would agree. Like, I mean, I feel like that's where I think I said last week, like, or not last week, last month at this point, but last episode, I think that's what I was saying, like on the go and in mobile and commuting and things like that. That's where I feel like I would use streaming the most. And that seems to be where it makes the most sense. You've got a tiny device, so you just won't ever have the power that you need. But for a home solution, I just don't ever see using it, personally. But I could see how maybe someone who just was coming into gaming and they didn't have a PC, it would be a quite turnkey solution to not having to worry about, you know, what do I need? Do I have to get my own graphics cards? And, you know, for a lot of people, like, that is actually really technical stuff, even though it's, you know, it's relatively straightforward, I think. But some people do worry about, they hear about like RAM and GPUs and clock speeds and what type of CPU should they get. They don't know if they should buy a PC or build their own. And if you say to them, well, like for $10 a month, you know, there is a PC somewhere that's just going to feed you your games. It's a pretty attractive solution to someone maybe coming into gaming. But yeah, for someone who's established like myself, I feel like, for me at least, it would be best suited to like on the go, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree, to be honest.
If I'm away. Even things like, it's actually kind of cool when you think about, like, you go on a holiday or something, or even you're lying in bed and you just want to open up your phone, you could play whatever game you want. It's an interesting concept.
I completely agree. And I think there was definitely, you know, we'll do something with it in the future, but we're just not there yet. But actually, there's a huge amount of people that, you know, do see PC gaming. The PC is a big barrier to entry, and, you know, I do think at some point in the future everything will be cloud based. But for people like you and I who are already very heavily invested in, you know, in the peripherals and in the hardware and stuff, that's going to be a long way down the road.
Yeah. Yep. All right, so the next topic is one close to my heart. It is the Paradox pricing experiment. So the CEO of Paradox Interactive, Ep.2, something Swedish.
Excellent pronunciation.
Thank you. Tweeted, quote, "As you might have seen in industry media, we are currently trying out a subscription solution on Europa Universalis 4, where you as a player get access to everything for around €5 per month. Super interesting for us to look at different models for our games as they live on for so long." And then in a second tweet, she said, "We know it can be hard for a new player to delve right into many years of DLCs and hope that this will improve the journey for new fans and players. It doesn't mean we're going to abandon our DLCs, but rather testing adding an option for fans who prefer this," end quote. So what do you think of that?
So, I don't know, obviously, you know, I'm a lot newer and, you know, more have my toe in the water in Paradox's grand strategy market compared to you and your listeners. So it doesn't impact me as much, but to be honest, maybe that's actually more beneficial for this, because I'd be more of the target demographic for something like this. Because obviously anyone who's experienced, and, you know, a lot of your, you know, viewers are quite heavily into the Paradox grand strategy things, they're already going to have the DLC. They're going to know about them. They're going to have all this stuff. Unlike someone like myself, if I picked up, you know, EU or Crusader Kings or whatever it may be, and there are 50 different DLC packs of every different type of thing, I'm not going to have a clue where to get started, where to be involved, anything like this. So, do you know anything about the pricing model? They haven't talked about anything like that.
She just said in her tweet that for around €5 per month.
Oh, sorry, €5. Okay.
But that's for specifically just for that game.
Mm-hmm. So to be honest, if it was me, I probably would do that. If that includes...
So their game has about, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I reckon somewhere between 10 and 20 DLCs. About 7, I'd say, of which are like full-on expansions that are quite hefty in price, maybe like $20 each or something. And then they've got all their cosmetics and all their extra things and events and stuff like that.
Do you get access to the game for that much money? The core base game as well?
Okay. You get the game and all of its DLC.
Okay. So basically then they're just looking at a subscription model for you know, Paradox games, essentially, you know, with the EU as the starting point.
So obviously they made Crusader Kings 2 free to play.
Yeah.
So that was their first kind of experiment into that. Like, what if we just give this game for free? Because that game has something like 20 DLCs as well. You know, and hardcore fans of those series are actually, you know, they're quite up in arms about how they've handled DLC. I think they were experimenting. These games are old. You know, CK2 came out in 2012. So they were really experimenting with DLC kind of for the first time with that game. We're at the kind of early stages of DLC. How big do we make them? How small do we make them? What do we do? Do we put features in, or is it just cosmetic? What do we do? And then they've gotten better over time. So with their latest games like Hearts of Iron and Stellaris, they've slowed down how much volume of DLC they do. And they do, in my opinion at least, much higher quality. It's still not always great. It can still be a little muddled of what you're getting and where. but it is way better than it used to be. And if Imperator Rome obviously isn't a very successful game for them in terms of their player base, it actually sold quite well. But it's interesting to see in that game that they haven't released any DLC for it yet, because they're just trying to get the game into good shape before they do. But they have some content packs coming up. And by the looks of things, it's going to be pretty small DLCs actually for now. But nothing to the extreme yet, at least that which we've seen for Europa Universalis 4 and CK2. So the problem, I guess, is for them, at least with those games, is that they have these established games with now, after like 5-6 years of content, just built up so much massive list of massive DLC page lists under the button to buy. And people are often just put off by that. I'm put off by it. I don't play Crusader Kings because there's 20 DLCs, and I don't want to play a game that's 8 years old that is a Paradox game. They look awful, especially the older ones. But I'm very interested in CK3. So I guess the question would be like, what's actually interesting as well, I'm kind of going in circles here, but at the beginning of this, before we recorded today, I showed you're playing Stellaris, and you were asking me what DLCs should you get. About that. So like, there's a perfect example there of, would you, let's say game included, would you pay $5 a month for that and get all the DLCs? Because that game now has 10 DLCs as well, pretty much. I mean, to be honest, I would. Obviously, I bought Stellaris a long time ago, probably in a deep Steam discount, for 10 quid or whatever it would have been discounted to. But if it, someone like yourself had highly recommended it to me and been like, oh, you should play Stellaris, there are a whole bunch of DLCs, I probably would pay £5 and tried it, even if I tried it for a month or whatever it may be. Chances are a game like that myself, I'm probably going to play for 2, 3, 4 months, in total amount of time before I never really pick it up again. Chances are, knowing my own habits. So it would be beneficial for me to pay £20 for those 4 months or something similar, rather than paying 50 or 60 quid for all those DLCs and then, only having a small access to them. So it makes sense, but on the flip side is, I am getting a bit tired of all these subscription services. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I am foolish and subscribe to every single one of them. If it exists, I'm a subscriber.
That's terrible.
Yeah, I know.
But see, this is what I was talking about this in my Discord with people, and I was saying, it would make the most sense to me, as a consumer, I guess, for us, to get an entire Paradox catalog discount. So it's like a $5 a month gets you all of their games and all of the DLC. Their games are so big and involved, not many people are actually really playing multiple at the same time, right? At least, unless that's like all you do, because they demand so much of your time. How can you play Crusader Kings, Hearts of Iron, Europa Universalis all in the same month?
Absolutely.
I mean, maybe you can in multiplayer with friends and stuff, but I think that's a really small subset of people. Most people I know tend to stick with one and then play other games, at least from what I'm familiar with. So I personally think that they wouldn't lose that much value if they just kept I'd actually. So here's the thing. If it was one game like Stellaris, like you said, you might subscribe for 3 or 4 months and then maybe realize, you know what, I'm actually not playing that game anymore. You might come back when a DLC comes out, and that actually kind of makes it attractive to think that you can get a £20 DLC for £5 a month and maybe play for 2 more months and then bounce out. But if it was their entire catalog, I reckon that you'd be much more willing to stick around, because you'd be like, oh, I'll probably try this other game this month. I have this game that I never tried. I never played Imperator Rome maybe, or I never played City Skylines, for instance, is a Paradox game. They don't, it's not their studio that makes it, but they publish it.
Completely forgot about that.
They've so many games under their publishing wing that they could actually like really include, and they could even, tier it. It wouldn't have to be $5. It could be, I would probably pay $10 a month just to get all that and never have to ever buy their games.
I would for the whole catalog, definitely. I completely agree.
Because you're looking at games like, City Skylines, Hearts of Iron, Stellaris, Europa Universalis, Imperator Rome, Crusader Kings, the new Crusader Kings as well, if they're including their new games. It's just like Surviving Mars. Like, all of these games are just like incredibly deep and consume a lot, eat a bunch of time. So I think it would be just such good value, and they could even then bump the price up a little bit because of that.
I was going to say, because for that sort of money, I don't think it would make economic sense for them, because you've just reminded me of the broad range of their catalogue.
But like I said, you don't buy all of the. Well, I guess I have bought most of those games.
I was going to say, I own most of the games you just mentioned there.
But my thing is that you don't play them every month. So I just feel like I wouldn't stick around with a subscription for one game, and I definitely wouldn't get 2 subscriptions for 2 games. I just wouldn't do that. But if there was one subscription for all the games, I'd probably never not let it go.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree. And to be honest, there's a business sense from the other side of things that you never need to worry about how well a game sells. You have guaranteed income every month. It's like having your own Patreon, etc. As a game developer, you don't need to worry too much about it, which might be a good thing, it might be a bad thing. I don't know, but it's definitely a potential option, and I'm not surprised that they'd consider it. You know, based on, as you said, just the depth of their library there. I mean, everyone else is. Why wouldn't they?
It'd be it's interesting as well because they have continued development of those games, but I wonder how they'd handle a game like where Imperator Rome is like on the ropes right now of whether it's going to continue or not.
Yeah.
They say they're going to stick with it for a year. They've got a few months left to go, and then beyond that, I don't know.
Have they got anything else in the pipeline after that? Have they got anything else they've announced?
So they actually came out with the roadmap of what they're going to do for a year, and then just recently they changed what they're going to do for the last part of that year and said that instead of one big update, we're going to do several smaller ones in the lead up to that end goal.
Sorry, I meant not just for Imperator, but for them, Paradox generally. What's their roadmap looking like?
Oh, for games? Well, they got Crusader Kings 3 coming out
Okay.
This year. As far as I know, they haven't announced anything else. They have 2 game directors, though, that are working on 2 different projects
So there are things
at
in the
their
work,
studios.
yeah.
And then they're also publishing Vampire Bloodlines 2 or whatever it's called.
2, yeah. Which is,
so that's like their foray into the
lot of hype for
AAA
that.
space, and and then they've got that gangster game. There's like a gangster game by Romero Studios. Oh, I can't believe Empire of Sin. That's its name.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, so that's in development. That's them publishing one rather than developing it internally. So Paradox is split into 2, really. They have Paradox Interactive, which is the publishing, and Paradox Development Studio, PDS, which is their in-house studio where they make the grand strategy games, right? So yeah, that's the kind of, they could buy up any game anytime. Basically, that's what they seem to do with like things like where they just suddenly come out publishing City Skylines out of nowhere, and then things like that. And they're also, they've got another game on the Epic Store right now that's in early access called Surviving the Aftermath.
Oh, yeah.
And that's that post-apocalyptic building game.
So, I mean, I've heard very mixed things about that, but
yeah,
I've
been meaning to cover that, actually, because this is often another tangent, but I guess it's relevant. But generally speaking, yeah, so the Surviving brand is what they kind of like termed this as. It's not being made by the people who make Surviving Mars. It's a different team. A lot of people thought it's the same team. This team is actually a team that just previously made a mobile game before, and that's basically it. 2 mobile games, I think. Apparently not very good ones either. So they seem to have been given like a lot of big cash injection from Paradox. Maybe they bought them up kind of cheap, or they haven't bought them. They're just working with them. And they're then releasing an early access, post-apocalyptic, city-building, survival-ish kind of game onto Epic as an exclusive. So it's like... really far down the well there. And then they're also, the last thing that they're doing is that they got their mobile game, Stellaris Galaxy Command. And they got in trouble over this because it was using reused assets. It's farmed out to some Chinese developer, and it's apparently a lot more common for that to happen over there. So they took the game down immediately as it launched and then brought it back up just recently. So they got their fingers in a lot of pies, so to speak. They have their hands in a lot of things.
Yeah.
So they're doing lots and lots of different stuff. But in terms of grand strategy, Paradox Studio development games, it seems like Crusader Kings 3 is a really big one. Because Crusader Kings 2 is this huge beloved franchise.
Yes.
They had a bit of a misstep with Imperator Rome, and I think they don't want to make those kind of mistakes again.
No.
But it would be so interesting if they came right out the gate and said, like, there's a subscription service for this, we're going to support development. But my question would be, like, how guaranteed is the support of development then? Like, would they do it for a year and then say, like, oh, what if the game doesn't do well, like Imperator Rome? When you're on a subscription service, it might be a bit weird then if they said we're not supporting it anymore, because then you'd be paying every month for a game that doesn't get any new updates or new content, or you just then have to then buy the game. I
mean, that's
so it could end up bad.
But you'd have to, you'd have to imagine that a lot of people who play Paradox games, are heavily invested in the Paradox grand strategy things, and they always know, even if Imparada's terrible or whatever, in a year's time, 18 months' time, the next iteration is coming down the line, and that's something they will be interested in.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's no right or wrong answer, really. It's just interesting.
That's what I was saying as well. It might make more sense to have a publisher-based subscription service. I mean, it just seems weird to do it for one game.
Yeah.
When you have something like Game Pass offering 20 games that are like AAA quality as they come out, it seems like they really want to have their cake and eat it too by just having one subscription service for one game.
Game Pass is like 120 games, by the way.
Oh, it's loads. I mean, I meant like every month they're adding, adding like 5 games of AAA quality almost. Pretty much any game that's AAA quality is going on there. It seems it's kind of crazy, and every Xbox development game is going on there, and they've got 11 or 10 studios now all to themselves that they've been buying up. Obsidian, all these really well-renowned studios. They've made a new studio over in LA in Santa Monica. I can't remember its name actually, but so good things are coming for Game Pass. Absolutely. You know that. Whereas with a subscription service for one game and a game that's like 8 years old, is EU4 going to be around in 2 more years in terms of new content? I don't know.
But the things, I think that's why it's so easy for them to do. They can throw it together with minimal effort, and it will make some money, and it will tick along a bit. But they don't really care if it does or it doesn't.
Maybe.
EU that game has made its money for Paradox. They're sort of done with it now, and anything else is just going to be a little bit of extra.
I'd love to know how their CK2 has gone since they made it free to play. So they announced Crusader Kings 3. They make their previous game free. I wonder how much money, if any, they're getting from people purchasing DLC from that game.
Quite a few YouTubers I follow at the moment are doing CK2 playthroughs and Let's Plays and all this sort of things at the moment. So I'm assuming that must be being driven and getting a lot of views. They must be driving a lot of sales and things there. I'm assuming they're doing some marketing, pushing, things like that on it. But yeah, I don't really know.
Well,
interesting.
Let us know in the comments.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
I mean, it is interesting. Now you've reminded me how many games Paradox do publish.
Yeah, it's loads.
And all
they're the
a lot of
number
games
one.
I love as well. There's definitely. I mean, if Origin have got one, EA haven't released a new game on that in the last 6 months. Apart from Star Wars, well, the last about 9 months. Apart from Star Wars, then and everyone hates them as well. So there's definitely some space for Paradox people who have quite a lot of good consumer goodwill.
What's interesting as well, because Paradox is on the Epic Store, they're on the Origin Store.
Yes, they are, yeah.
And they're bundled in with the Game Pass as well. So
yeah, they're involved.
Literally get their games already with Game Pass,
Yeah.
or at least most of them. But you don't get their DLC, so that seems to be the differentiating factor there. But yeah, Paradox are probably like the number one, in terms of volume, strategy publisher on Steam at least. You have Sega then would be, they own Amplitude, who make Endless games, the Endless Space and Endless Legend. You have...
Which I never really... I mean, Endless Space.
I played Endless Space. It's actually really good.
Okay.
Then you have Total War, obviously, and then you have something like Company of Heroes.
Yeah.
That's all Sega. So they'd be like another big competitor, because Total War is like this, they're huge.
Oh, yeah.
And then the last one would be Firaxis, which just have Civilization, basically. And they dominate.
Yeah, they only need Civilization.
Yeah. So it's just interesting. They're kind of like the 3 big publishers that dominate, at least strategy gaming on Steam. But Paradox seem the most well positioned to actually go out and buy and publish.
I mean, they're the most broad, as you've said. I said Firaxis, although they're the absolute big boys. I said all they have is Civ and
they have XCOM as well, actually.
Oh,
2K.
Of course they do. Yeah, of course they do.
2K.
Yeah, but Paradox published so many things and so many fantastic games you've mentioned there as well, amongst a few others I'm thinking that spring to mind. So yeah, we'll see what they do. It's interesting.
Yeah. Leave some comments in the YouTube comments, or if you're listening on podcasts and stuff, you can always tweet me at ROP_tweets, or if you join our Discord, we have the suggestions section. There's probably going to be a podcast channel in there at some point. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on these things, and we can actually bring them up in the next show as well as a response. I listened to a few podcasts that do that, where they a week ago or whatever, on the previous episode, someone wrote in response to these things. It's either clarifications or corrections, or sometimes it's just like to continue the conversation if more news comes out about it.
It is good to get some of your input. Otherwise, just me and Darren just look each other in the eyes for an hour talking with our own stupid opinions.
So speaking of pricing and publishers, the next one is number 5, EA price hikes on Steam. You actually kind of showed me this one as well. I guess we were just looking it up right beforehand. This one just popped up for us. Most of EA's catalog has been affected by recent price hikes. Dragon Age Origins, Mass Effect, and Need for Speed are some examples of games that have seen their prices almost double on Steam versus Origin, while games like Jedi Fallen Order remain to be the same. And there's not really much more information now. I was looking up to see, did they say anything about it? They haven't said anything, but lots of people have reported it, and no one really knows why they've done it. I mean, the obvious... Well, it's not even that obvious. I don't know. It seems like they've raised the prices on some things, obviously to drive people to their platform, potentially. Because obviously Steam take a 30% cut. They take actually a little bit less if your game sells over a certain threshold. So they might only be taking about 15%. So that might be why you're seeing like a 15, 20, 30% increase on prices. But yeah, it's a bit... I mean, no one else does that.
I mean, there's not a whole lot to say about it. But I think obviously, I think it feeds into what I mentioned a minute ago, is that they have obviously Origin Access and Origin Access Premier, which is their big thing, which for a while was looking like fantastic value and still is good value. I don't want to naysay it. Still is good value. I'm still a subscriber, but they've had one major release in the last 9 or 10 months, which has been Star Wars, which has been fantastic, but that's it really keeping people on that platform. I think obviously anything they can do to make the pricing model for that, I guess, more competitive and to drive people into it during a bit of a dry spell, probably the better for them. I mean, it's also, it's EA. We know that there's not a great deal of public sympathy there for these guys, and this is exactly the sort of thing they would pull.
There's only one reason they do anything.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So yeah, really not much more to say on that, but it's just interesting, and I guess buyer beware. If you're going to be looking at things on Steam, maybe it might be best to wait for a sale or get it on Origin if you want to give in to the corporate overlords, I guess.
Just always, as with the amount of platforms that are available these days, do your research before you buy anything. I mean, with things like older stuff like that, you can always normally get on Good Old Games GOG as well for very deep discounts compared to the major platforms. So just do your homework.
Indeed. The next one is just a very small little addition. I just wanted to mention that Cyberpunk 2077 obviously got delayed, pushed back quite significantly to September 17th, when it was originally slated for mid-April at some point. So that's like a full-on 6-month delay. And there's a bunch of news surrounding that. We're not going to go into it too much because it is kind of old news, but I just wanted to talk to Toby about it and see, what do you think about delays in general? Like, so Cyberpunk's getting a 6-month delay. They basically say that they're going to actually be working even harder in those 6 months, including overtime and stuff like that. Some people are obviously very touchy, I guess you could say, about that kind of thing, saying like I can't believe they've extended the timeline and they're going to be doing overtime more, extending crunch and so on and so forth. Other people are a little bit more like, oh well, there's no gun to hell to their head. That's just their job. Whatever. What's
that quote that everyone always wheels out? It goes, a rushed game is a bad game forever. A delayed game is a good game in the future. Or it's something I think I just butchered it.
Well,
something
I know what you mean. Yeah, I think it was a Miyamoto quote. I don't know the exact quote, but generally speaking, like you can't make by delaying a game in theory, you don't make it worse at least, right? So, and a rushed game is always going to be bad.
I mean, think of all the bad and rushed out games we've had over the last couple of years. There's infinite that we all know if primarily the publishers anyway, had given them an extra 6 months, an extra year, although that's a huge amount of time, there'd have been fantastic games and they just needed that last 10-15% of polish or tweaking or whatever. Plus also I think a studio like CDPR, they have so much respect in the community and are known for releasing such high quality products. I haven't had one bit of bad will, to be honest, about them delaying this game. I mean, coming off the high of, The Witcher just announced they'd sold 533% more games at the moment because of the series. So they've, people have seen the quality there. They've got a lot of public faith that this is going to be an absolutely fantastic game. I think we'd all rather give them an extra 6 months.
I agree.
Brilliant.
I totally agree. Do you think this game is too much hype though, and can it ever live up to that? Because it does seem to be extreme, and the longer you push it out, it just gets more and more.
I think for the amount we've seen, the hype is very, very high. But the amount we've seen has been very good. Because it seems like they just said the other day that the core gameplay loop is going to be similar to The Witcher, as in there's about 75 side quests they've said on top of all the main story and all other types of things. But for someone like me, who's nearly 30, it very much to me makes me think of old school Deus Ex. That's the vibe I get from it. Yeah. The universe seems quite similar to Deus Ex, which I'm sure is no mistake. It's this alternate future, cyberpunky, cool aesthetic, and it seems very similar to something like Deus Ex in terms of it's all about approaching situations differently, different situations. It's a proper RPG with a huge branching system of systems and different ways to approach everything.
Yeah.
So it does seem very, very hyped, but CDPR have got 3 major games under their titles, Witcher 1, 2, and 3, and to be honest, they've all been very, very high quality. Witcher 3 and its subsequent DLCs, one of which came out about 2 years after the release, so not way after the hype, was very, very good. So this seems quite different, but I think if anyone's going to do it well, I think these guys are well positioned.
And just when I was mentioning at the beginning, what do you feel about, there's a lot of articles that go around about crunch and stuff like that. How do you feel about that topic in general? It's quite a broad topic. I don't really have a good question framed for you. But
obviously you've worked in the industry yourself, obviously not
well, at the studio I worked at, which is, is Creative Assembly, they don't crunch. They manage really well. It's in my opinion, and from what I've learned, just when I was studying in college, if you have good producers and you can, produce plan things out accordingly and really well, you can avoid crunch typically. That's why you plan things out. They're programming and they're doing art. There is time estimates for all these, and you can, you overestimate to compensate
Absolutely.
for that. So bad direction potentially can lead to you saying actually this game's not shaping up. We need 6 more months.
Yeah.
And then that might be a situation where you get something like that. Something must have, in my opinion, for 6 month delay, something must have changed. They said that they were in the playtesting phase and there was problems and things like that, and they wanted more time with it. So, depending on that, basically when I worked at Creative Assembly, they did delay their games a couple months because they weren't feeling like it was up to the top quality, but they just planned for, they always said we're in a lucky enough position that we can do that. and not have to like have crunch. And they do have people stay there and work overtime, but usually it's of their own accord. I've never seen it where it's like a gun held to their head. But you do hear about stories in in development, especially in America. It seems to be where it's like people like bringing mattresses into work, sleeping at their desks, being told like being kind of told like you got to work like the weekend and stuff like that.
As you know, as Europeans, English people, British people, whatever, we do already have a bit of a distorted view of work life. I mean, America has a much tighter work-life balance than we do here. They work significantly longer hours than us, just as a matter of principle. But you're right, and I do think it depends on the studio. There are some, there are plenty of things we think, oh, there is crunch here, but they're handling it correctly. We know about it. We're trusting them not to have people sleeping on the floor, not to, having people absolutely burn out and be working 7 days a week, for 10 hours a day. And there are studios we think, well, actually, these guys probably are being pushed to do this. But I don't inherently disagree with it necessarily, as long as it's done in the right way. I mean, as you said, you'd hope that the majority of the time you underestimate and also you overestimate, so you've got that leeway. But these are also creative projects. That's not always the case, and I understand it. But as long as it doesn't become a culture of this consistently, and you think every project, everything, we're always underestimating, we're always up against the clock, that's when it, I guess, becomes more of a concern, especially if you work there. I mean, to us, it makes very little difference. But, if you work there and want to keep good talent and good people with you, then you've got to treat them well. Yeah.
I'd be interested. I actually knew a guy that worked on The Witcher, and he later worked at Creative Assembly. He said it was a great work environment. Yeah. So the conversation surrounding crunch always seems to come from, at least from what I've read, people on the outside worried about what's going on the inside, rather than too much about people complaining on the inside. Yeah. Like at a big company, you'll always get one or two people that might be like, "Oh, we work too much. We shouldn't work this much." Blah blah. And then you'll also get people that genuinely do work too much, and they probably ease up a bit, but they might just be very driven and determined. So you can always, it's easy when you get one or two people to come out and then talk to a journalist, then you write a headline about it that can be like, oh, the whole studio's in trouble, when really it could just be a disgruntled employee. I mean, if you believe I mean, I know all about that, right? So don't listen to crazy people that leave companies and say that things are weird, because it's not always the case.
But yeah, I think company, last thing I say is, journalists, as you just touched on there, do throw around the phrase crunch all the time, and it's not, although of course there are reasons why they're not, it's not often employees who are saying these things. It's journalists just firstly calling it crunch when it may be just that, oh, we've had to delay things, let's all get our noses down a little bit and crack on. That doesn't mean we're necessarily making people do 12 hours a day and you're sleeping on the floor.
Typically I've heard the worst things about crunch when games actually don't do well. When it's like Anthem and things like that, you hear about like they're crunching really hard, and then it's like, but when games go well, when it's like Grand Theft Auto and Rockstar, you hear that they, I mean, that they crunch, because I think it was Dan Houser, he's actually left Rockstar now, I think, said that they work like 80-hour weeks. He just said it in an interview passively and stuff like that.
Oh, sorry.
But you never hear about their crunch.
Last tangents. I know we're just all doing tangents today. We've got a lot to cover.
It's a conversational show.
That, Anthem, they're completely redoing the whole game from scratch, from the ground up.
Yeah,
they're rebuilding it from the ground up.
Yeah, we probably should have actually included something to do with that, but that was just over a week ago. I think I saw Angry Joe talking about it.
I can't remember.
But I can't. This is again secondhand information, but it's some sort of quote that came out where they said like, we're going to rework the entire loop to be fun and something like that. And Angry Joe was saying, like, what were you doing in the first place then?
I know.
Because the way they framed it was like they hadn't thought of this, like the way they framed it anyway. But I've never been interested in that game. It always looked super
I got it day one. I mean, like a lot of people. I didn't pre-order it. I didn't pre-order it, to be fair, but I got it day one because it looked fantastic. And the first 2 hours of it were fantastic. You're like, it's so pretty. I mean, even now, it is one of the best looking games I've ever seen on Mars. It looks fantastic.
Yeah.
But then as soon as you get over that, you realise the gameplay is the least fun game you could possibly make. And I don't want to make this a big rant about Anthem, but you honestly cannot imagine how it possibly got released in the state where you go, nothing about this is fun or enjoyable. Yeah. There's no gameplay here. There's nothing interesting. There's a loading screen every 30 seconds to go anywhere. It takes the loading screens were on an SSD 1 minute to 2 minutes long.
Yeah,
and you'd have them when you enter the level, when you transition between a level, when you move back to a level, when you went onto a menu between a level. It was ludicrous.
Yeah.
But
then they had those DLCs and things come out, or the added updates, and was it Cataclysm? I think they called it, something like that.
Something like that.
And it just looks so bad compared to what they.
I mean, all 6 people who still play were very disappointed with those updates. But
then they just give away the game for pretty much free.
But there you go. But they had a huge amount of crunch to get this released in time, and these poor developers who are probably excellent developers in the midst of things, who probably had their souls absolutely crushed developing and releasing a product that is universally hated.
That's the thing. Yeah, it's a multifaceted argument. You got to feel for them for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And also with these things, you know that most of the guys on the ground didn't think, oh, this game's brilliant, but before it was released, they all knew this. We're working on an absolute car crash of a game here. Let's make the best of it we can.
Yeah.
But hey.
There.
Sorry, I've got blood up there. I'm sweating thinking about it. How annoyed it made me.
Well, that's pretty much it for all our news topics. We've got one interesting listener question that was added in then as well from the Randolpski. So I've just put this out actually just right before the podcast. I haven't been very good at it. I'm going to get better at it doing it next time. Where I ask for questions beforehand and I'll actually present some topics to see if we can get some questions centered around what's coming up on the show as well. But we can always tackle anything you guys send in. It helps with the flow of the topics, just to add another conversation point, another perspective as well from what people are thinking on the things that have happened in the recent weeks. But anyway, Randolpski wrote in and said, what do you guys think of the fact that Plague Inc. had a player resurgence due to a real-life epidemic that is still going on? He's, of course, talking about the coronavirus.
So, I mean, it is a pretty big, endorsement of how good Plague Inc. is as a game. If you think, say, wherever you are, you think, oh my god, this could be I'm not saying it is, but think, oh, this could be the end of the world. The virus is here. And you go, let's log into Plague Inc. and see how this is all going to play out. I mean, that means you've done some pretty cool simulation work, and people respect your game quite a lot.
That is funny because I saw it like way after the fact. I didn't even know about news stories being written about it. I just saw that Plague Inc. was trending.
Yeah, and
you can't create the coronavirus in the game, can you? Like, you just have viruses that you spread.
No, I don't think
they didn't add the.
No, well, actually, I mean, they might have. They have done that a few times with other things, but
where they add recent.
But I also think, due to the fact that you've had 1,000 people die, it's probably been quite bad taste to do it at the moment. But it wouldn't surprise me if in 6 months' time there was a coronavirus in Plague Inc.
Yeah. Well, I haven't played the game since way back in the day. And one of my first jobs when I was a programmer for a small company, I had it on my phone. I used to play it every morning on the way up.
Yeah.
It's a great game, but the game does just basically play itself.
Oh, it does. But I think that's why it's so popular, because it's a rubbishy iOS clicker in a very nice package that gives you a lot of information.
I think they made it a bit more involved for Steam, but I'm not too sure to the extent.
So I've heard they have too, but I haven't touched it. Because I've got it on mobile, I've got it on iOS, and I do play it from time to time, but it is a much more of a brainless, let's just try and kill Greenland ASAP.
But yeah, I don't know any more to that question. Like, what do you guys think of the fact that that's happened? It is just really bizarre. I mean, it's funny in a way. Funny. Like, I wonder, like, have hospital games also had any kind of increase, or is it just literally
everyone's playing Theme Hospital, planning things out?
That's what I was thinking. Or is it just the fact that you're spreading, you're the one spreading?
I mean, you had that. I mean, you don't read the news at all, so you had that hospital in China that they built a whole 10,000 person hospital in 10 days, whatever it was. I mean, there's been some planning games behind that. Someone's playing Theme Hospital. Someone's been playing something. That's some skinny city skyline stuff there. Really quick. There's some strong logistics.
That'd be a great mod for City Skylines if you could spread an infection within the city.
Is that not a thing already? I mean,
I don't know. There is a disasters expansion.
I've got that, but I don't think it is a.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It'd just be cool.
Yeah, it's interesting.
All right. So thanks for the question. So the next thing I thought we were gonna do noteworthy releases, but I couldn't be bothered looking it up properly. No. So I didn't really see anything that was noteworthy. I was trying to think in my head as well. I don't think there's anything major. There was that Wolfson. I can't remember even the full name of the game, but it's like a Path of Exile type game. I don't know what you call those. What are they?
I don't know what you do call them. Top hack and I don't know.
Online RPG kind of thing.
I don't know what you call it. Yeah.
God. Wow, I feel like
Action
an idiot.
RPG, I don't know. I've got no idea.
Well, anyway, Path of Exile-esque type games. Those
Diablo-esque, you'd say. I mean.
Yeah, because you're looting. What are they called? They have a name.
Yeah, they do have a name. I agree with you, but I don't know what it is. I think they're called hack and slash action RPGs or something like that.
Okay, let's go.
But I'm not sure.
Well, anyway, that game came out and it has insane amount of popularity on Steam. It just blew up, but then the servers completely crashed down and died, and you can still play it offline, sort of. You don't have full access to the game apparently. So I don't really know much more than that, other than it was trending on Reddit and it was on a few news stories written about it on PC Gamer. This game is just exploded into popularity, but it's currently sitting at mixed because so many people just can't get into it. But apparently as well that when you hit the midpoint, then it gets really repetitive and it's starting to turn people off it as well. But yeah,
I was going to say that we should probably cover in this section. We should actually look at for the future. New games that have been released across some of the major game passes as well.
Definitely.
So, I mean, someone like myself, I rarely these days anyway. Not I used to all the time, but these days I rarely buy a new game straight off Steam or something like that because I know, give it a month. It's going to be one of the passes in some description. And most of the games I play so many Xbox Game Pass games at the moment because they all go out. So it is good to know. I think it's definitely good to let people know what anything interesting has come out in the last week or so on that.
I'm definitely going to get better at it. Just writing down when things come out. It's just because we had such a massive gap between episodes, and I didn't even really know if this was going to happen today because of the storms and stuff.
Yeah.
So it kind of messed up on that. But we do have one release that I'd like you to read.
Oh, great! I can guess what this
one
one's
of your
going to be.
Favorites.
Let's have a look at the title here. Okay, so it's a good title. So we've got Tentacle Girl. Oh God, why are we doing this? So here's
we need a name for this segment.
Here's the official Steam description. Tentacle Girl is a jigsaw puzzle. Each picture is a no longer relevant but connect. Who writes these?
I don't know.
I mean, God,
They're
Google Translate is terrible at like Japanese into English. Each picture is no longer irrelevant but connected into a story. There's a name here. I don't know how to pronounce it. Aoi. Oi? Aoi and Sally. That's two people. A treasure hunter. That's one. That's
God,
singular.
This is horrible.
Found a cave during the expedition. They foresee a treasure in it, so I decided to go in and take a look. Unexpectedly, this is a tentacle cave. I mean,
that is it.
Have I just read? I mean, I don't even. This segment needs to really be improved, and this is terrible.
That was just so bad.
That was awful.
But yeah, I just find it funny because it's so badly written as well. I mean, obviously it's translated, but then it changes perspective. It's like, this game is a jigsaw puzzle. Then later it's like, I decided to go in.
And then it names two people and then to cause them one thing. It's a car crash from start to finish, and it makes me a bit sick.
Aoi and Sally, a treasure hunter. And then later it says, they foresee a treasure in it. So I decided, who are you?
Who are you? Who is talking?
What is a tentacle cave?
I do think there's a good segment there about terrible games / like badly dubbed Japanese game releases.
I must confess, there's a podcast I listen to where they go through every it's Sacred Symbols, the PlayStation podcast by Colin Moriarty. And I've actually been on his podcast before, which is awesome. The Fireside Chats. Mm-hmm. That is his Twitter handle and his mantra, basically. But yeah, on his PlayStation podcast, which is something I've tried to kind of partially emulate this podcast off, which is a great podcast. He goes through every single release of PlayStation games that week. But now, since they've opened up their platform to like having anything, they often get like really bad write-ups. So it's kind of devolved into them reading really bad write-ups. Now I don't know why, but the reason I wanted to actually just read the best games that came out in the last week, the new and trending. But the new and trending on Steam is literally just sex games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you give a PC gaming platform to a lot of really, angsty 14-year-old horny boys, and then you call a game Tentacle Girl or Tentacle, is it Tentacle Girl?
Yes.
Yeah, Tentacle Girl. We all know what's going to happen there.
And this game released on Valentine's Day.
Of course it did.
So
of course
a lot of lonely boys,
lonely hearts out there.
They know their market. Anyways, so yeah, we're just gonna wrap up by what we've been playing. I haven't been actually playing too much different than before. I tend to always play the same things anyway. But I've been playing Factorio. I don't want to go on too long about it. You know the game. Most people know the game.
So
amazing game. There's many. I've done a video on it. Actually, basically went mini viral for me, which is great. But lots of people have done videos on it trying to explain like why the core loop is just so satisfying and so engaging. And it's just one of those games. I've actually got 2 or 3 people just this week to buy it on my Discord because I streamed it locally to my Discord and a few people were watching. And I'd never look at it and think that I want to build
me too.
A production line or a factory or anything like that. But it's very hard to explain. But honestly, if you somehow you've stumbled across this podcast and don't know or haven't looked into the game, I highly recommend it, or check out my video about it.
I don't think I've spoken to anyone I know who plays games who's played Factorio from all different backgrounds who hasn't loved it. I mean, people who only like shooters, people who only like whatever. I mean, as I said, if you look at it on paper, it sounds awful. Let me hit rocks for a while until I have enough to build a miner. I'll build a miner, and it's and essentially you're automating a factory.
Yeah.
But there's just something about it that sucks you in, and an hour becomes 10 hours, and then before you realise that you're struggling over your water pressure, you're trying to get some more pumps up, and it's just a problem, and
yeah.
And yeah, I think there's just something about it where there's always something. There's always a crisis that's about to happen that you need to solve.
Yeah.
That you need to jump on.
Well, that's the thing. It's just a perfectly balanced game in terms of you've always got something to do. You've always got something on your mind. You're always thinking of the next step, the next technology. And then there's always the natives that are like harassing you and you're trying to get to new areas. And for me, I remember the very first time I played it, I got pretty far into it, but I actually basically lost. I mean, I didn't lose. You can always just kind of keep going.
Yeah.
But you just start from scratch again, but I was never going to do that. It's too far.
No way.
But what happened was, you run out of they're finite resources, and I ran out of coal and I ran out of copper around me. My machine's powered down. Then I didn't have enough to get to the distance I needed to get to the next area with trains and stuff. And I couldn't believe it.
That's exactly the sort of thing that would happen. I think that's probably what happened to me the first time I played it. But then second time, if there's ever a down moment, you're instantly trying to get to that next patch of coal and bring it into your network, your next patch of iron. There's always something to do urgently, more or less.
Yeah. But basically I've just been playing that. I've never actually finished it. I'm like 100 hours into the game now.
I mean, most people haven't finished it.
But yeah, just fantastic game. And we've both been playing Satisfactory, which is, we just played that just today for an hour.
Absolutely.
Beforehand, because they just had that itch, and they've just come out with that new update, update 3, where they've added fluid dynamics and hollow tubes and things. Did you notice that? You can actually fly along the tubes.
Yes, I did. I've literally just, I've just done that milestone to get the hollow tubes. I haven't actually put any down yet, but I've just done the milestone to...
In Satisfactory?
Yeah.
No, they just added that.
No, I know, but remember what I played today?
Oh, you played today?
Yeah, I played today, and that was one of the milestones. It was back. It was a tier or so back, but it was just unlocked. Or hadn't been unlocked, so I quickly unlocked it. But I haven't actually put them down or built them or anything like that.
Wow, that was quick.
But yeah, I logged in, and now they've added fluid, so every building I had required water, and nothing worked, and I was really furious. And it took me like 45 minutes of hand bashing. There's a new like copper piping thing that I had to hand make for like 45 minutes to build.
That's why. Yeah, so you had your own save. That's how you're able to get it.
Yeah, I had my own save. Yeah,
gotcha. Because I was thinking, like, how did you do all that in an hour? Because I left Toby
in the game.
I left Toby in Satisfactory, and then like an hour and a half I was here. So it's like, holy shit. But yeah, no, that game is just. I mean, it's on the Epic Store, but it's actually now got announced for Steam. So anyone that doesn't like Epic, it's going to be over there soon.
I mean, it's 3D Factorio, but it is. Yeah, it's not as good as Factorio. No. It isn't. I mean, because. It almost can't be. There's too many. Factorio in 3D would be too overwhelming.
Factorio is an infinite world for one. Satisfactory doesn't. It's a pre-made map, even though it's huge. And then it also the thing I love about Factorio is the enemies. I just think that's a really fun extra challenge to have. That they're always. It's almost like a mini tower defense as well as the production game. Whereas in Satisfactory, there's just like a few creatures that run around. You don't have like waves and hordes and have to clear out infested areas and stuff like that. And it's a much brighter and happier world. But it is interesting, the trade-off would be building in Factorio is, in my opinion, more satisfying. Yeah. I think so. But just the scope of things you can do in Factorio is way better because there's just so much more you can do. There's way more tiers to everything.
Absolutely.
The scale and the trains and all the vastness of the distances.
I mean, it's always cool to see things in 3D. And Satisfactory when you go, when you build a new thing. I mean, for I'm assuming a lot of you probably haven't played it, but at some point, relatively early in the game, you build a space hook, I think it's called, or a sky hook. Space elevator, sorry, which is this giant. I mean, it's huge. It takes up a massive amount of space, and it literally you watch an awesome animation where it grabs a satellite, essentially a link from a satellite out of space, and the whole ground shakes, and it's awesome. You can see all these things in 3D that in Factorio they're like a 24-bit sprite that you can't see any detail.
It's like a AAA take on it, even though it is an indie company themselves. But the art quality and assets and the UI and the production quality of everything is just so high. Because even like all the way, I mean, everything in Factorio is a pretty high quality for its 2D sprites. Like they all have animations and stuff, but the animations of like machines in 3D and pumping out stuff is just so much more.
Well done.
Yeah, it's just really well done. And now they've added trains and fluid dynamics. So trains was like about 6 months ago, actually.
So I mean, it's still very early stages. It's still not fleshed out. It only really stretches to like the mid game of a game, of the end term of a game. But
that's true.
What there is a great platform to develop, I think
I'd still recommend it though.
Oh yeah, me too. Obviously I bought it and I got my money's worth 5 times over. It's fantastic. And buy it now while it's still relatively cheap. Give it, and in the next 6 months, 12 months, it's going to be absolutely phenomenal when when things have overhauled and finished.
I'll be interested to see what they do next. Actually, so it's worth mentioning that the water dynamics, fluid dynamics update 3, that's all on the experimental branch. So they got an experimental branch of an early access game. So, but their updates are really high quality. They said themselves that it's Coffee Stain Studios that make it. That they want to be kind of like No Man's Sky in terms of how they put out updates, like a really big milestone update with tons of features.
Started off absolutely terrible. They started off hated by the whole community of the car crash.
They talked about the updates.
Then 5 years later, I've become a really good game.
Not the release. But yeah, no, they literally said it in their stream. They were like, we've designed a website that's just going to show off everything with GIFs and videos, and it's just like a big major milestone update that they're going to put out every few months. So not like small incremental things. So what you're getting is really polished, and I guess they wanted to put it to experimental first just to further test it before they deploy it to main.
Yeah.
And it seems like when it gets deployed to main, they're going to be putting the game on Steam then. It has a Steam page now, so you can check it out as well.
Well, I've got, and from my perspective, the two things I've been doing this week. So firstly, I've, as I'm sure you guys will all absolutely love, I've sort of fallen into Stellaris for the first time properly. I've touched on it before. I've played it for a couple of hours here, a couple of hours there, a bit of this. But, Darren gave me like an introduction to it on multiplayer 18 months or so ago, just so I knew the absolute basics. But still, as I'm sure you guys all know and can imagine, it's very, very convoluted and difficult to get into when you don't really know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But then over the last week and the last few days, I just really sat down for some proper sessions and sort of everything finally sort of clicked and, understood. Obviously, I'm not saying I'm the expert. I still don't know a lot of things about it, but in terms of the core mechanics and the core gameplay, etc., everything sort of clicked. I know what I'm doing now, and I can really see myself losing quite a lot more hours into it over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. To me, I won't gush about it, but it's actually, with its updates, it's kind of faded from how much I used to love it. I used to really prefer it beforehand. Still do really like it, but it's just one of those games where you have so many different play styles. A lot of people I know say they only play like one way. They'll play like as it's always a fanatic purifier that's going to kill everything they can, and they don't diplomacy with anybody, and they don't do anything like that. And that is fun.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I've done it. It was one of the first things I did. But it is really fun when you challenge yourself to play differently and try what's it like to be a pacifist? What's it like to be xenophile? What's it like to be a materialist that focuses on science, or whatever the case might be? Then there's the DLCs, like I was explaining to Toby before. Megacorp. I'll see what it's like just to focus on trade, and it's something that I initially thought I'd never enjoy doing that. Right, I always enjoy playing just the way I'd. One or two different ways, but it actually makes you think differently, and you really get to explore different mechanics, and it's really fun and rewarding when you do build up that way.
Yeah, honestly, that's what I'm looking for. All of I've only done one playthrough as the most vanilla humans with an absolutely incompetent Earthman, me as the leader, just making arbitrary decisions based on no information at any point.
Yeah.
So I do want to do something. I do want to do a bit more of a an involved, like a bit of an RP playthrough, is like some sort of role
yeah.
Playing.
Well, this is the thing actually. So Federations is coming out. Yeah. I'm assuming in March at this point.
Haven't you done a great video about Federations?
I have done a great video about Federations. Thank you very much. And yeah, it's doing quite well. I appreciate that a lot. But yeah, no, I basically recapped all the features in it. There's like 6 major overhauls that can be bundled into one overhaul. It's a diplomacy focus. Obviously, I don't know what is in the DLC and what is just part of the update. That kind of remains to be seen. But generally, you can the federations that are in the game are basically the alliances, and now they come in 5 different types, and you can do all these different things with all of them, and interact in different ways, vote people out, vote people in. You can actually have one that's basically like they can't even leave. You can force them in and stuff by going to war with them, so it's very subjugative stance and things like that. Now there's like a galactic UN council kind of thing, protecting people. What are you looking at?
No, nothing.
I want to know.
No, continue.
Okay. He picked up the iPad and looked at it.
No, because I was just saying you've been saying I've been playing War Untitled War, and I absolutely have not.
Yeah, no, that's there from before. But yeah, anyway, long story short, so that Federations pack is going to be coming out next month, and I plan on doing a playthrough. And one cool thing you can do in Stellaris is actually, I like to roleplay, and I like to create, and not just in video games, Toby. But one thing you can do is you can actually write the backstories and create empires that populate your galaxy. So you can make 10 empires and toggle them on to make sure that they pop in.
You can do that now? Is that with the update?
No, you can do that now.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I haven't touched any of that.
So that's what I love to do. So then, and I might play with 1 or 2 mods that add a few extra kind of quirks to the empires or whatever it might be. But that's what I plan to do. I plan on doing like a new Let's Play because I have a Let's Play channel as well for people who don't know, where I do Let's Plays of Imperator Rome. I did one in Frostpunk, and I'll probably do one in Stellaris Federations when it comes out, because it's one of my favorite games. And it was actually the very first Let's Play I ever did back in the day when it came out. It was super popular at the time. Played as Space Romans.
Awesome. That's cool.
Alternate history. Romans never.
What were your sort of traits and leaderships?
Rome never fell, and we had slaves because it seemed to make sense. We were spiritualists, so we still and traditional, I think. So they have strong traditions. They're militarist. Yeah. So militarist, spiritualist. Those are the 2 main ethics that they had. They were imperial, so it was an empire. they had Roman names, which wasn't in the game back in the day, but they've added that to the game now, so you can just click to do that. But I just edited the files to do that. And that
was there any like specific way you played to make it Romanesque? Or?
Well, it was a Let's Play, so what I did at the time was I actually uploaded every single day. I can't imagine actually doing that now. Wow. That'd be crazy. And that was while I had a job. So who knows what the fuck's happened now.
I wonder why you were sacked.
No. What? No.
You wasn't sacked.
No, I wasn't sacked. Or was I?
My view.
Imagine if that came out that I was and I'd lied. That'd be pretty crazy. They could just say that.
Yeah, they could.
And
what could you do about it?
Yeah, I don't know.
What could you do about it?
I don't have to worry about that. But anyways, long story short, it was a Let's Play every single day. I did like 15 days of it. And I actually asked people every day to vote on what we were going to do.
Okay. And
I displayed the vote on screen as a little Senate. So those guys are my Senate. And then that's actually where the idea for Republic of Play came from. I call my patrons and Twitch subscribers senators, mostly because of back in the day, it worked so well back then. And people really got into it, and they were voting on what we should do. So one of the big votes at first was, do we abolish slavery? We've had this for a while, and people were writing in the comments like, totally role-playing, like, I'm Maximus whatever, and it's like Fart Dropper 24 is his actual name, or whatever. And they were saying, like, you know, the reasons that they think that they should abandon it or take on slaves or whatever. And it was really cool. It was really great. Awesome. And that was super added to the immersion, obviously. But yeah, so basically you asked how did I determine my playstyle. It was based off of what they said I should do.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that was really fun. But yeah, in the end, I think we had slavery pretty far in. We did eventually get rid of it and integrate certain peoples, and then we kind of talked about like what it's like to grant them citizenship, because there is actually, you can set like the living standards of people. So we were like, we'll keep them low down,
keep them
and then eventually we'll bring them up and grant this sector living citizenship. So cool, you know, so and we named all the planets after you know, Arretium or Armanum and all this sort of stuff. And then we had like the Gaul sector, and it's just ridiculous. But yeah, it's great. So I'm probably going to do that again because I just love it. And then add in a bunch of my own flavor empires, because I've run multiplayer games, as people may have known or may know, that we have kind of weird and quirky empires, some that like only live around black holes, some that start in civil wars with each other, and just all these weird kind of encounters that you can have. And I wrote backstories for them, and people really enjoyed them. Actually, people still play them now, and there's a mod on Steam where you can actually play as them. Cool. So yeah, that's probably what I mean.
That's as soon as you're gone to us, I'm going to start a completely new thing, and you know, do something completely different and enjoy it there.
I think playing the spiritualist is really fun because there's like military zealots, you know, just like purging the heretics kind of thing. There's just so many interesting little ways to play.
I mean, I've hardly even touched on those things yet, so I need to get involved. So the only other thing really I've been doing this week, which although I haven't necessarily been playing, some of you may or may not be watching, it's the Rainbow Six Siege Invitational. It's basically like the World Cup. It's the grand. That's real mature. That's so mature. It's like the grand final. It's the
sounds great.
Yeah, it's like the World Cup of Rainbow Six Siege. I have to say, which I don't care what Darren said. He's trying to turn my mic off now. I don't care what he says. It is the best competitive esport I think to watch going out there.
I've actually got nothing against it. I don't know why I did.
No, I know you actually don't. I'm not offended whatsoever. But yeah, it's brilliant. It's the grand final tonight. I can't wait to look forward to that.
So who's the two big teams?
I actually don't know who the two teams who are going to be in the grand final are decided today, because there's a lower bracket and upper bracket. So it's
by the time this goes out, they might know who won.
Yeah, no. They will know who won if anyone's interested, because it's 10 o'clock GMT tonight that the grand final is. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I've been watching that for the last week. It's awesome, really well presented. It's got like a $3 million prize pool. It's big time, man. Yeah.
Who funds that? Is it Ubisoft?
It was I think like 2 million was Ubisoft, and then for the last million for the last month they've had they for the first time ever released a battle pass, like Fortnite. And a premium battle pass. You had a premium and a free to play. So I keep saying battle pass really weirdly. Battle pass. Like every other game has a battle pass. And if you pay, for 15 quid, whatever, it's on the. Go on, you were about to say something?
No.
Okay, on the premium tiers. They said that 35% of the income from the process of the battle pass went on top of the prize pool, and it ended up to be about $3 million.
Sweet, nice.
But that's cool. So I've been watching that, but that's about it really. Other than that, I'm just dropping into a few things. I want to still go and play. I've just downloaded Final Fantasy 15. That's just come on the game store. I want to check that out because I think that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
I've had like 20 minutes in. I've just got through this like tutorial area and.
Is there anything you're looking forward to in the immediate future?
There's a few things coming out. So Resident Evil 3 is coming. I was saying this before we started. Resident Evil 3 is coming out soon.
That's March, isn't it? I'll tell you what's coming out in March. Did you ever play Mountain Blade?
Bannerlord's coming out.
Bannerlord 2 is coming out in late March.
Darren, I can't believe I didn't even talk about it.
I know,
Mountain Blade is probably my favourite series
of all
time. Yeah, we'll do a whole conversation about Mountain Blade. I will get sucked into it. Yeah. It's mods, everything. I spent so many hours in Mountain Blade.
I suck at the game, but
oh god, I mean, so do most people.
I've been so bad at it. I mean, I'm actually good at battles. It's just the campaign. I always just.
Oh no, but that's the point. The campaign is ludicrously difficult unless you do things quite specifically in some way. You could spend on like one of my campaigns. I've spent like 100 hours in. I think I'm currently in prison, and
but this is the thing. You lose like one battle sometimes, and you're just like relegated that's why back to nothing.
You've got to be careful, but. Behind all, obviously, we're not going to go into any detail, but behind all the scenes of all that stuff, you're also, even if you're losing, etc., you're gaining renown and relations with other people, which let you do loads of other things. That's coming out. We'll do a whole conversation about that.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 3 is coming out, and I think probably most of you have, or based on their sales, I think probably a lot of you played Resident Evil 2, the remake, which was absolutely incredible.
It was 75% or 60% off not too long ago on Steam.
Yeah, that's
only a year old.
It's brilliant. I think even if it's not your cup of tea to play, it's actually a really good game to watch a let's play of as well. That type of game, I'd highly recommend having a watch of that. So 3 is coming out there. We've got The Last of Us coming out, in a matter of months now, or April, I think. Last of Us 2?
May, I think.
May, okay.
I could be wrong.
May. Yeah,
we can leave it there because we'll be doing our next episode in a couple of weeks anyway, so don't have to go too far into the future. But speaking of Mountain Blade, just before we wrap up, is that a lot of YouTubers actually have access to it. I've been meaning to just ask.
I've been watching things.
I'm sure I'd be able to get it because I actually played it at E3 like a few years ago.
It's an open beta now. You can just get it.
Oh right.
Yes, you can. If you just sign up, you get it now.
Are you sure it's not closed?
No, it's open now. Definitely, you can just sign up and have it. Or you not have it.
You must have to pre-order though, or something.
I don't know what the thing is, but I know that
it's got to be something.
Maybe it is a pre-order. Maybe it's based on. But I know there is an open beta now where everyone's in. Basically.
Yeah, so I really want to try it. So the thing I don't know is actually I have to look this up, and this is why we'll be a bit more informed next week, depending on.
It's fairly
who knows what happens. Is the campaign going to, because it's coming into early access, which is a bit disappointing for some people because it's been so long since the previous game.
Yeah.
But I hope that it releases with a campaign. Some people are saying that it might be just battle only. Which
I get the impression it is just battle only, and I don't know. I'm not based on anything solid.
Really?
But that's all I'm seeing.
Lately, anyway.
But then again, there is a huge segment of the community that only ever cared about multiplayer battles, and that's all they ever did. I mean, I preferred single player. I played both, but single player is more my thing.
Well, to me, it's just like a total war game. It's like battles are great, but I want the context of the campaign. But anyway, we'll leave it there.
But yeah, that's what I'll be in.
All right, so we'll leave it there. All right, we'll leave it there. So that was a pretty good conversation.
Yeah, some good calls there. Good chats.
So we should be back hopefully in 2 weeks, weather permitted apparently, and sickness permitted.
The plan.
But so we'll be able to. So basically, if you've got any questions, comments, concerns, topics, or anything like that you want us to cover, just write it in the comments of the YouTube video. Hopefully, going to make the YouTube video a bit more interesting as well, instead of just a static image.
Yeah, it would be great to hear from you guys. So I said, otherwise it's just me and Darren, talking to each other, which is lovely, but it'd be great to get some other people.
And it's great. We got some decent comments in. I like it to be topical, so I only chose 2 out of the 4 that we got. So if we can be topical, that's great.
What were the other 2? You didn't show me.
The other no, I didn't. Yeah, they're just like broad questions, like what do you think about microtransactions, stuff like that. So it's like
it's completely ridiculous.
Yes. But no, they're just, if it's topics that's like something that's happened in the week, and if you have the time or inclination to think of us, then write it in my Discord or on the comments in the video and stuff like that when you're listening. All right, so that's gonna be it. Thank you very much for joining me, Toby.
Thank you. My pleasure.
See you guys in the next one.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.